Shit. So, it's been a long time coming.
Yes. Finally got to meet you on election night.
Yeah, on the whole Prop B thing. Why'd you get involved with all this?
Well, I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go into my own professional career or just what was happening and what I saw in Austin. I'm a former probation officer and I've worked in social services.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that you were a PO.
Yes, I was. I worked with kids, though. I chose to work with kids because I think the most impact you can make is with children. Children are impressionable, and I think if you get them at the right age, you can
Yeah.
definitely.
Also, whatever happens to you before you're 18 kind of usually goes away.
Yes, that's kind
So-
of, but there's some where.
Unless you
they're-
commit like murder or you
Right,
rape somebody, or do
right,
something really
real
bad,
serious.
right? But like for the
But
most,
also sex offenders, they even though you would think that's not a murder, they still their records follow them
well,
because
yeah,
it's a
that's
safety risk.
like assault, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah. I mean, but generally speaking, it's like if you're if you're a kid, it's almost like you have an unlimited pool
grace
of,
period.
Yeah, you have just an unlimited grace period to just fuck up as much as possible until you figure it out, right?
Well, yeah, I mean we see them as children that they have different things at play. Their environment, their own societal pressures, their immaturity.
And I think that's good. I think
Yeah,
that's a good thing that
definitely.
you give kids the grace period. And there's still consequences, but it's not like life-altering consequences. Like I used to
No.
sub in AIST, and I was like at ALC and whatnot, and like a lot of these kids, they just got caught smoking weed at whatever school they were at, and then they got sent to this stupid little program that they had to do for X amount of time, right? Or they got into a fight with some kid because they're like teenagers, and that's just what happens when
Right.
people are that age. Like a lot of it wasn't too big of a deal, but you got to do something as a society to do whatever you can to stop these people from falling down like a really bad path, right? Because like a lot of today's homeless could have been yesterday's kids that were your probation clients.
That's right. And they were. We have a lot. It's not talked a lot, but a lot of foster children make up probations across the country, are on probation, and after some of the people that were most impactful in their lives were probation officers. That was basically their source of support. And our resources that we have, because in probation, especially in the juvenile probation, you're seen as a social worker, but also are someone that's making sure that they comply with judge orders. But even the orders, it's a bifurcated process where we want them to obey the law, but we also recognize that they're children and they need support.
Yeah.
So I was a probation officer, but I also grew up in South Dallas, one of the poorest areas. My best friend was shot in the back
Okay.
when I was growing up. So I've always been in environments where either poverty, crime, being Mexican, I've always been entrenched in these issues. And what I was noticing in South Austin, where we live, like 10 minutes away from where our home is, there were encampments popping up everywhere, and it was predominantly in a Hispanic majority community with three Hispanic majority schools right immediately next to it. And I was like, oh wow, why is this happening here, and where is this council member? Why are they not making sure that these kids aren't seeing the things that they're seeing? So I held a city council meeting where I invited Pio Renteria and Ann Kitchen. They ignored several requests. And at that meeting, I heard from a lot of parents who told horrific stories. I mean, I don't want to get into graphic, but it's the most graphic things that no child anywhere in Austin should not have to deal with. And it wasn't like that before June 2019. And I talked to I'm a big-time Democrat activist.
Are you still involved with that, or like has like the way the
I
party's
think
gone kind of
more-
made you want to change a little?
Yeah, I think I'm more on the national. Like I definitely have. I'm solid left, but locally, I've seen that we've gone to the extreme left, and it's scary because I think if you talk to Austin, they don't veer extreme left. But right now, the loud people like Greg Casar, Chris Harris, they have had the conversation on the floor too long. And what that little Twitter battle we had yesterday.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that in a minute. But one of the things I talked about when I briefly ran for city council is the fact that I thought that you should like have the kids who get sent to ALC or kids who do like stupid juvenile crimes. You should just make them clean up homeless camps in order to get off probation or
Right.
minimize their time in these
Right.
alternative
Right.
education programs. And it does like a couple of things, right? Like it removes a lot of the trash and the garbage from the street, right?
Right.
And B, it shows these kids like, hey man, I better get my shit together,
That's
otherwise
right.
I'll end up like that. So it's just
Right.
you want to
Yeah.
deter this as much as possible.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And the problem, when you go too extreme left is where I can already hear the liability, you don't want to, but you definitely want to have a little bit of tough love. And I guess that's a part of me that isn't the extreme left, is that because I grew up poor, I was a probation officer, I can see a lot of sides to this, that sometimes you do need tough love. Sometimes you do need to have children shown the consequences of poor decisions, and also sometimes it's societal failures. There is that whole school.
There's a lot of society. There's a school to prison pipeline.
all that.
There's the fact that in certain schools, cops are more likely to pat kids down for weapons or like send kids away in handcuffs for yelling at a teacher and acting up than in another school.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You
And
might be
also
more
special
likely
ed.
to,
Well, let me tell you this. So another thing that I'm really entrenched in is special ed services, and how the rescue plan. Right now, there is a shortage of special ed testing for AISD. No one is talking about this. It's not getting the attention because homeless issues and the pandemic have taken all of the attention.
Okay.
But if you're not addressing special ed needs for children of color or children overall, where are these children going to go? To
that's the future homeless population,
exactly
and
right,
that just means that
delinquency.
the big nonprofits get more and more money funneled to them because they got a future generation of people
That's
that they got to
right.
take care of, right? So
And that's a huge concern for me right now. And I've talked to principals all over AISD that have talked, hey, we cannot meet the demand of the special ed needs, and that's really concerning.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I think that what's been the most troubling about this whole thing is that you have the this really loud vocal side.
That's right.
That doesn't want to make any kind of compromises
That's
or
right.
concessions in any capacity. So it's like when I had Loey on, Loey said, listen, man, like there should be places where they can camp and places where they can't camp, but you got to enforce where they can't do it.
That's right.
And by Loey even saying that, it's turned around to, oh, you hate poor people.
I know.
And that's what's making people really frustrated, and that's what's turning people off, and that's what's making a lot of people, probably myself included, was one of the factors, right, that said, you know what, I don't care, I'm voting for Prop B, this is just too much, like these people are, it's good that they had, that, look, these people have been disenfranchised, the Chris Harrises and the Kassars and those people, they've never been listened to for a long time, so I think it's good to get all those voices heard, but it's like this is just becoming an abuse of power in terms of how you're utilizing that voice, and so you got to check that.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental problem is people. There's a lot of centrists, in Austin. There's a lot of liberals in Austin, but in the end, this just went way too far for people. And you really, if you look at the exit polling, how do you get 40% Democrats in a city like this to vote for Prop B? It's just because they feel completely unheard and they realize that there isn't another plan in place. If they don't vote yes, this just goes on ad infinitum.
Yeah, and it
There
still
just
could go
was
on.
no alternative.
It still actually
Yeah,
could go on ad
yeah,
infinitum.
It definitely can. We're learning that.
I don't. So what do you think's gonna happen now that this is passed?
So, I mean, we also have the state,
Okay,
they
well-
have the state camping ban.
Sure,
It's
but what do you think's
voting
gonna
this
happen
week.
in Austin?
Right. Right now.
Realistically, considering who our DA is, all that stuff, like, what do you think's actually gonna happen?
I do believe there will be campgrounds, and I believe that because I will not rest until that happens. Right now, they were in. I was saying earlier that they were in minority, low-income, working-class neighborhoods. These encampments. I had talked to a couple Democrats, and I was like, "Hey, I need your support. We need to call the council and say, why are you not finding safe places for them?" And the guy told me, I recorded him doing this too. He said, I'd rather them be there than in the woods. And I'm like, but they're next to children. Why are you? We're Democrats. We should care and know that these people need help. They need resources. We need to put them somewhere now. And he said, "Oh, I don't have time for that." So basically, they told me.
Wait, who's they? Who's they? Who did you speak to?
And
when did this happen? Because that's a big, that's a pretty big thing to say, right? So let's just get who
It
was
was
they
the
and-
Travis Country Democrats. It's the largest Democratic base
right,
in
but did you
Austin.
remember who you spoke to? Did you remember when you
I do remember, and I'm not going to put it on blast, but I recorded it because I showed to me what I'm up against. These are NIMBYs. These are people who do not want them in Travis County and Circle C
and these are the Travis County Democrats that when you said, hey, we
one of them, not all of them.
Okay,
It was just one person in general.
Did the Travis County Democrats not support the encampments and want to
I
allow
don't understand
camping?
how anybody can support.
I know, but in
this
2019, when this happened, and then when you saw everything leading up to Prop B, you saw like the Travis County Democrats saying, "Hey, vote no on Prop B." Like,
Right.
You saw that.
Right.
So
and now,
to call them NIMBY seems a little odd. That's why I want to clarify that.
What I want to say is that now we're seeing the city council today, a few minutes ago, released the places. One of them is Circle C, and there's other places all scattered through Austin. Now, I'm going to be interested to hear what all of these people that were pro or for Camp Anywhere You Want, Democrats, where they were against. Is there going to be a backlash where they're going to be like, oh, but I don't want this campground here? But you were okay with them being in low-income, working-class community of color. These encampments are not near my home.
They're not near my home either. Yeah.
So this is not. This has never impacted me directly, but it does impact me that no one is raising a stink that they're allowing this to happen.
Cleo,
in
would you
poor
want
areas.
one in your home?
An encampment, if the city council had, if they were at least 3 miles away from children, where common places where children are, that is school, parks, playgrounds, there are registered sex offenders in these encampments.
I agree, yeah.
Okay?
I agree,
So
yeah.
they should not be around children. That's number one. That's a non-negotiable.
Of course. No,
Okay.
that's self-explanatory.
Number two.
Yeah, self-explanatory. Okay.
Number two, there should be police officers there. We should have some type of order going on, not chaos, because women right now, homeless women, are victimized and raped daily in these encampments. Daily. This is not hyperbole. This is actually happening. If you talk to homeless, and I'm sure you have, this is happening to them. They will, just because Chris Harris thinks he is advocating for homeless, how you could think you're advocating for allowing the inhumane conditions that they've been subjected to because the council didn't have a plan, and say, I would prefer that than safe campgrounds, because Chris Harris has said he doesn't support.
Yeah,
safe
sure.
campgrounds.
I did hear that from him. But what else? Because these are all very good points.
Okay, so that the police, we need to have them safe. Women in these encampments need to be safe. That is a priority for me as a woman. And the next thing is, any place that they choose to put in anybody's area or whatever, the council member needs to visit and actually see the location and speak to the community around
I
them.
like that.
There needs to be a gained trust in them.
Okay, how frequently should that council member be in the community?
Well, at least in the beginning, because it's...
But how frequently per week? How many times per month? Like, how
All
frequently
right,
should...
I'll tell you what the mayor said to us. Do you remember what he said? He said he would come as much as he needed when he wanted to put a shelter 0.5 miles from a Hispanic school. He looked me in my eyes and said, we will come as much as you need to make sure that this shelter at that time, which didn't happen, is operating, is safe. For me, it was the loitering or having people who are questionable in crime or not around children. That shouldn't happen, because West Austin wouldn't tolerate that. Travis County wouldn't have tolerated, because that's one of the questions I asked the Travis County Democrat. Would you allow a shelter immediately next to you and your children? He said, no, absolutely not. I'm like, well, why are you okay with this happening in a predominantly Hispanic school? And he didn't. He said, "Oh well, I'm not, but pick my battles."
But how many times a week? With that being said, now that Prop B is passed, how many times a week should
once a week.
Once a week, right?
At least, yeah, once a week.
All right, I just wanted to
Why
get a
not?
time frame in terms of how they should visit, so that we
Do you know about the Housing First strategy?
But-
Like, if you think about the Housing First strategy, which is what ECHO and the City Council endorses, these people do not have to comply with drug treatment. They do not have to have drug testing. The only thing that the Housing First requires is that you have a home and that you will be there. That's it.
I think that's a pretty shitty. That's a pretty silly
So
model.
what kind of neighborhood is going to want a shelter that is
that
like
has no rules?
Yeah.
Nobody. No neighborhood would want a shelter with no rules. But if you had a shelter in place, right, where you had a police officer, you were far enough away from kids in the school, and let's say, God forbid, even if you weren't, right, if you had police officers and if you had vocational training, and if you said, well, you have to pass this drug test in order to, and it's not even for weed, just for like the hard drugs and stuff like that. Like, you have to pass drug tests for hard drugs in order to be able to stay there. I think, if you had like some rules and requirements and people were actively trying to get jobs and improve their positions in life, I would be down for it.
Right.
The one thing I would say, though, and this is in defense that being 3 miles away from a school,
Right.
is that, like, let's say some of these guys don't want to be a part of it. They could still hang out or loiter near that area and and that could really be harmful to people in the neighborhood and stuff like that, or
That's right.
families. So yeah, I think 3 miles from the school.
But you don't prevent that no matter what you do. They can do that today.
They're doing that now.
I mean, bottom line, this all comes
Well,
down
that's
I got
to.
involved.
But there's a whole bunch of encampments. What do you think about the encampments that they got set up for right now?
The one at the state.
You just sent me. You just sent me a whole bunch of things on
well,
Twitter.
Right. So that is proposed locations. It still needs to be fleshed out which ones are viable and have access to services. But the city council cannot use the weak excuse that, oh, well, they're not going to have the services. Well, they don't have any services. For 2 years, they've been without services, without water, without toilets, in inhumane conditions. So, and you are the city mayor. You can bus them to certain services if they need that, to job training. And a successful location like Haven for Hope in San Antonio, they have a courtyard for whoever's not ready to actually commit to job training, to all the services they have in their facilities, because they have them all immediately next to each other. So people who just need a safe place with security are able to be in Haven for Hope, the courtyard. So why we haven't even followed that model, I don't understand. I mean, to have a city manager and no homeless strategy officer in June 2019, to not have a viable plan, it is infuriating that not even Chris Harris or his ilk did not put the pressure on the city council to demand that for the homeless themselves if they care for them.
Well, I think that everything that's happening right now, either by design, either deliberately or just by accident, or people being out of touch, I think that what's happening is going to cause in the next few years America to become an extremely right-wing nation. That's what I think is going to happen, and I think that I really don't want that to be the case.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that happened here. If you look at people's attitudes towards the homeless, has this helped or hurt? I mean, I think we all know it's hurt. Yeah. People do not have. They look at this now. What you could argue on one side to say, well, the only reason it's hurt is because they've now seen the truth. If you basically, already believe that, you're like, well, I could have told you that. But I don't think it's been helpful. And at the end of the day, if the city, chooses encampment sites and they don't enforce the law around those sites such that they become dangerous, it make people feel unsafe, chaos, it's not going to go well with voters. We're gonna do this again
and again and again
and again and again, because at the end of the day, you cannot allow a small segment of the population to get away with traumatizing other people and think voters are just going to
although big
tolerate that.
nonprofits are going to do really well from it, because the more you see this stuff, the greater you're going to get in funded, the greater dollars you're going to get in funding to help deal with that situation, right?
I mean, until voters just decide they're done. And then
and then you make the situation even worse for the homeless, because
council,
you just create a sentiment of anti-homelessness
right.
where nobody's helping anybody, and you make these people worse and more violent, and we become more divisive, and we're less cooperative as a people. So it's dangerous, man. With the way it's being done, it's dangerous.
The problem right now is the council's, it's a one-trick pony. I think voters will get tired of this. I think they will vote some more centrists onto the council. I don't ever expect to see, or at least not anytime soon, the Austin City Council to be, bleeding red.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But,
I don't want that to happen either. Right?
But I believe there's plenty of room on the council for some centrists, people who are solution-oriented and not really motivated by, dogma.
But it's going to make the state a lot more red. This is going to make the state a lot. What Austin's doing, and the way Austin's doing what they're doing, is going to make Texas a lot more red. If you just looked at what happened in this past election, it was a disaster for Democrats.
What was
basically, yes.
Yeah, what was the backlash for Obama when he was elected? We have Trump. There will always be a backlash to everything. Voters will decide, at the end of the day, on everything.
No, this is 100% true.
Yeah.
What do you think about Ryan's article?
So Ryan's article about the funding, right?
Yeah.
So I just feel that it's an election campaign. I mean, if you're going to ask questions about how the Prop B supporters, it's legitimate that business owners have a vested interest in protecting the safety of their employees and also customers. And if they're not safe, of course, I would do the same. I would have paid 10 times more if I had money to do that. But you look at the mayoral campaign for Mayor Adler. 2014, it was 1.2 million.
And 2018 was probably almost as much, if not more. Yeah.
So why don't we look at a progressive candidate? Why don't we look where his revenue source was? He has vested interests. People who supported his campaign.
And the Travis County DA got extremely well funded. Yeah, extremely well funded, and got a ton of money from out of town. But to Ryan's credit, though, Ryan does bring that up.
Yes. He needs to.
To Ryan's credit, so my take on Ryan's article is I think it was actually if you
Yes.
actually read the article,
Absolutely, not the
it
line.
was a really good article
Right.
with an extremely inflammatory headline
Oh,
to get
on
as many
purpose.
people to read
On
the article
purpose,
and
yeah.
comment on it
I
as
agree,
possible.
100%.
But what he did a really good job of equally presenting both sides.
Yeah.
He talked about how Adler donated $10,000. I always confuse thousands and millions. I don't know why, but he donated
Which is
$10,000 to Homes Not Handcuffs. Right towards the end of the campaign,
Yeah.
and he did a really good job of listing the concerns that people felt about the homeless. I think Ryan's article was really good, and I think he's gotten a lot of hate and criticism from it. It's a little bit unduly, and I think it's because of the headline, and the headline is
I
probably
think-
getting people to not even read it.
But I think you also got to ask yourself, it's not like the other side doesn't have an audience. They do, and it's not like the audience is
A free
poor.
audience, yeah.
A very large number of progressives in this town have money.
Yeah.
That's why we can afford to have these debates. If we had no money, we wouldn't be talking about what we could, spending tens or hundreds of millions of dollars on homeless. We have the money. So you ask yourself, why was there not more money? And I think that's another side of the conflicted
That's a good
progressive
point.
position where you have progressives who are rooting for this sucker to pass. But on this, one vote, they just couldn't bring themselves to vote yes. But you keep doing this, and they will.
Yeah,
we
and I
know
think
that
it
those
got a
people
lot
are
more
out
money
there.
because people just didn't want to donate too.
That's
That
right.
could have also been the
That's
case.
right. The withholding is
Yeah,
a way of
like
voting with your kind of pocketbook.
that is because Homes Not Handcuffs and all of these progressive organizations
Yeah.
are actually really good at raising money.
Absolutely.
When they
Why
want to be
couldn't
good
you
at
raise
raising
money
money.
about this? It's
Yeah, it's
because
'cause people didn't want to
people
donate
didn't
money.
want to. They're like, okay, I'm going to go and you made me feel guilty. I'm going to go vote no, but I'm not giving you any money. I mean, I think that's really
Or
what
I'll just
goes
say that I
on.
voted no, but I just
Yeah,
won't vote.
yeah.
Yeah, or it's like
Exactly.
I'll support you with my silence. Is how like a lot of it I think was.
That's right. Exactly. I mean, there was an interview somewhere, like right down here in one of these restaurants, where it was a gentleman and a lady that were kind of business owners, and she comes out and says, "Yeah, I think I'm going to have to vote yes." Clearly, progressives clearly not happy about it, and he's like, "I'm going to vote no, but basically, I want this thing to
It was
pass."
on Vice News. It was on
Yeah.
Vice. I
Yeah,
saw that.
that's what it was. Yeah,
I saw that.
you look at this whole thing, and you know that anybody who is trying to invest in this town. I'm not talking about people that are wealthy. I'm talking about small business owners who try to make something go here. Many of whom are progressives, and they realize if this continues, we're in trouble. It's going to wreck the place.
Yeah.
So they don't know what to do.
I think that there is there are a whole there's not homeless people are not a monolith.
That's right.
No.
And I think that there's a whole multitude of different types of people that become homeless.
Yep.
And I really do think that most of the people that are homeless are pretty cool. Like they're not bad people. Like they're chill, they're nice people. They're just down in their luck. They have some addictions. There's some mental stuff that's a little off. And the people that we complain about the most, the worst ones draw the loudest responses.
That's right.
That's right.
And
that's what's unfortunate is that I really it's frustrating what Mayor Adler and the City Council has done because they've given the homeless advocacy or the need for help. We all have a bad taste in our mouth now from
Yeah.
it instead of actually truly like we've housed homeless and refugee families we support and that's another thing that Ryan did really great is that he said one of the big supporters also supports homeless agencies, like actually gives more money to homeless agencies,
which is good.
yeah, so it shows that Austin is very compassionate, but we're also not going to tolerate lawlessness on our streets.
And I think that this would go a lot better if when it was presented, they did a better job of actually making us feel like we were involved in the process.
That's
like,
right.
Hey man, everything that we're doing is contributing to getting these people off the streets. Like they didn't really do that at all. And even with these homeless encampments, I will bet almost any amount of money that nobody's getting a property tax break if the encampment's near their neighborhood, right? Like, would you be
Right.
surprised if nobody got a tax break?
Right,
So
right.
of course people are angry because you're paying more money for more services and you're getting a shittier product.
Yeah, no. It's
So if
it's
that's
out-
what's going to be
it's
the
out of
case, then
control.
they got to make their sacrifices too and lower the property taxes.
That's not going to happen.
That's not going to
Exactly. So
It's
why do you think
frustrating.
people are
It's
going to
maddening.
feel? Why do you think people are feeling this way? Like you pay more and more money
Yeah.
to live next to a crackhead.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
it's like I grew up in New York and I lived at home with my mom and dad until I was like 27 years old, right? Until I moved here, and I had no motivation. And I think part of the reason why I didn't really do well in New York is it was complete lack of motivation, because no matter how hard I worked or no matter what I did or how much
Yeah.
money I made, the best I was able to do is, why am I going to pay $1,200 a month for one room in a closet next to a housing project where I have to worry about getting stabbed on my way home from the bar at like 2 in the morning.
Doesn't make you
it's
want to get
hard.
up and
Yeah,
go,
it doesn't make you want to actually work and be a productive member of society in any capacity.
No,
so I
you
think
said
that
the homeless aren't monolith. I think you can also say the yes votes weren't monolithic either.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a variety of people who said this isn't working. We want something different, and I think we're now gonna see if the city's willing to listen and
the city's
create.
unwillingness to listen and come up with middle grounds, at least in the past, and the unwillingness to like compromise or enforce basic rules, and the unwillingness to work with people proactively on like their tax situation and rent and affordability is just as big, if not a bigger reason for this anti-homelessness stuff than the actual homeless.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that, the other sad piece is it's not like this is a new thing. Well, Austin's going to, blaze a trail here. We're going to try this new thing and see if it works. Everybody already knows that it's been tried in numerous cities, and it's never ended well. So I don't think it leads to voters even having patience with this. It just, they already look at it and they're like, wait a minute, didn't they just try this in 5 other states, other cities? Don't we already know what happens?
Well, so what do you think's going to happen now that this thing, that Prop B passed? Like, what do you think's going to happen? Where do you see
I think
Austin?
They will designate
All right, but
locations.
where do you see Austin six months from now? Where do you see us in terms of how our homeless situation is being addressed?
Probably fighting over whether or not the city. So they're going to pick locations. I think that'll likely happen. I think the voters, they know the voters will insist. They're going to get people in those locations, and then they're going to have to make a decision. Are they going to enforce some semblance of rules that keep those locations from spiraling out of control or not? If they don't, we're going to be fighting about that. If they do, then I think some of the energy can go out of this. People, and they will have to ultimately have permanent housing. That's the next big thing.
Yeah.
How many hundreds of millions we're going to spend on that?
I think you also got to be careful too, and it's that these the housing activists, right? They need to actually be good at compromising, right? Like they can't yell and scream and complain when a couple of rules start being enforced, right? Because then it's just going to turn people off and get us to keep fighting with each other, and then eventually nothing's going to get accomplished.
Right.
Yeah, voters are not going to put up with, okay, we moved a group of people from under a bridge where there was aggressive behavior, and we put them in this location, and we still allow aggressive behavior.
Absolutely.
I think by having defined locations, there has to come with it an expectation of some level of decorum, and it doesn't necessarily have to be puritanical, but there's got to be. You cannot allow assaults. You cannot allow people harassing women and children. That just can't be. Or people won't
and you got to
tolerate it.
keep the homeless people safe that want to find housing and improve their
Correct.
lives. And I think that when it's too much, like how it is, it almost makes it harder.
Yeah.
Because now you're like, oh shit, I got to always watch my back and look over my shoulder for this next homeless guy trying to take my tent or take the bike I have or take whatever it is I got. Like now I got to look over my shoulder and watch out for this guy. Or if like a group of people notice that that people are giving me money and helping me, they're like the crabs in the barrel trying to bring you down.
Yeah.
So it's actually like almost hurtful. And then you got a lot of these people that have records and all that stuff, right? Like you don't think that like the way a campsite is set up is like jail, where you have like the bot, like you have like the guy who runs the tent, or like you have like some gangbangers that just come in there, or whoever it is, right? That like tell the homeless like, hey man, we need this, and this from you in order to even have your tent here.
Right. So you're saying about unregulated, or how it is right now? Where
Yeah,
there are
like
predators?
it's so unsafe because you have people just preying on them constantly, and nobody's doing anything. And
That's right. So one of the things that when he and I met with the mayor a couple years ago, and we talked about what we thought could help safe campgrounds, but we also talked about the non-compliant. And the mayor, if you ever get to talk to the mayor, or if anyone ever asks him what is his plan for the non-compliant, those who do not want to go to a campground, those who do not want to go to shelter, do not want to have any type of compliance with any order or rules, what is his plan for that? And there is none. So that is the element that is causing the most havoc everywhere. Will you agree?
Yeah.
The non-compliant.
Yeah, because then you don't encourage anybody to actually follow the rules.
Right. And will they move along to the next city to cause havoc, or where are we going to go in addressing that severe need? And it's going to go against what these far left principles of just letting people live the way they want to live. We cannot have that. That's anarchy. We have to have people have to conform a little.
A little bit, yeah.
So, do you have something to say?
No, same. You can't, at some point, if you have people who just refuse, they're basically setting up an option. If you believe the city's budget, you're going to have a toilet, you're going to have a shower, which you don't have today. You're going to have, they say, laundry. That's kind of the funniest line item in the budget that's thrown everybody for a loop.
I think laundry's good, though.
$175,000 for laundry. So you're talking about, you've got your basic services. You can get up in the morning, take a shit, take a shower, and put on a clean shirt, which you would think if you have an interest in getting on your feet, going to seek a job, or even if you can't get a job, even if you're panhandling, you would think that you'd present yourself, and that would be an opportunity.
I think that if you look dirtier and more unhealthy and more unkempt, people are more looking to feel sorry for you and give you more money.
Maybe you think so?
Actually, yeah.
But I think in the end,
I actually know so that
works.
That's what happens. Because I one time gave some homeless guy a jacket of mine that I wasn't gonna wear anymore, and he's wasn't wearing it. I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I gave you this jacket. Why aren't you wearing it? And he's all shivering, and he's like, well, because no one's going to give me any money if I have this jacket on.
The interesting thing is, you wonder, post Prop B, post all this chaos, if that actually holds. I wonder how generous people are being right now on the panhandling front.
You think they're being more generous?
I suspect they're being less. I suspect they're tired of this, and they've gotten a good look at this. And okay, this is not
enabling it.
It's enabling.
Yeah.
But I think if you're presented with an option to have a shower, a toilet, and a way to have clean clothes, a person who's interested in doing better is going to take the city up on that. And then you're going to have a population that just isn't. They're going to say, yeah, I want all that, but I'm not going to, that's not worth having to follow some rules. What are you going to do with those folks? You can't let them cause chaos. And I think the city's going to have to draw a hard line.
Which they're not going to do.
Yeah. And
we'll see.
I doubt they're going to do. And what do you think the state's rule is going to do?
I think it's just going to be another arm of enforcement that we will have in September. If and it looks like it will pass in the Senate, it will become law.
But you think it's actually going to really be enforced, especially with our DA, who's just going to drop everything anyway?
Well, it's not only enforced, but I think it's also withholding budgets.
About money.
The state can withhold budgets if they're not enforcing camping bans, then the state will not give them money
for services.
And not only with that, but also with the police defunding it. They will divert the money to state troopers or to state law enforcement. And who wants state involved? But this is what happens when you have Austin not listening to what even our president, President Biden, he even wants more police on the streets. If you have more law enforcement that are trained, that are equipped, that have the sensitivity training and all things, if you talk to communities of color, yes, sorry, another thing that is not monolithic, there are friends of mine from all backgrounds who say we need police, we need policing. We need them to enforce the laws. We need it to be safe, but we do not need to minimize what we already have 150 police shortage.
And also, if you don't set tangible, actionable, and realistic goals for reform, all it does is just turn an entire police department against you. And say what you want, but the police departments are extremely powerful.
Absolutely.
And no amount of just regular defunding is going to help that. If anything, it's a
backlash again.
Yeah, and it's gonna actually cause more of that power to be abused.
That's right.
Because listen, man, if I run a police union, right? And I know that at least $20 million of my budget is cut, and at most $170 million of my budget is cut, and I see how people are treating my officers, how people are treating me. Even if some of that is justified, because I'm sure some of it is, right? But even if some of that is justified, you know what I'm doing? I'm telling my officers to take their sweet time when it comes to responding to cases, and then you got a DA like Jose Garza, who's been more willing to prosecute cops than any DA in history. And not all of that's bad. If a cop's bad, a bad person, a hazard to the job, you should prosecute them. I think that's good. But you still have that in place, and you have this guy who's giving the lowest number of sentences for criminals.
Right.
You have all this stuff in place. So, if you're a police officer, you look at all this stuff, right? Or if you're head of a police union, or you're a police commissioner, you're like, man, this could really get bad for our officers. this could cause a lot of crime to happen. And it's also pretty easy for us to facilitate that because, hey, we're understaffed. We can't respond as quickly. Hey, we're underfunded. We can't get there as fast. Hey, there's so many bureaucratic requirements now for how we respond to situations that we're just not going to respond. Or we're gonna try to minimize the situations where that response will even be warranted. And then all of a sudden, what do you get as a result of that? You get more crime. You get more unrest. You get a lot more of these problems. Then you know what happens 4 years from now, 2 years from now, 6 years from now, 8 years from now, whatever the time frame is when people get sick of it. Your budget skyrockets.
Yeah. It's cyclical. And
People vote for their city leaders, but they vote for their state leaders too. And the state's got a heavy hand if it wants to. We'll see what happens. But I think the city's going to have to enforce something. If it doesn't, it can do this for a while, but I think voters will ultimately reject people on the council. We'll see what happens in this cycle.
I think that they're going to have to probably do something smart. Otherwise, 2022 is going to be a rough year for a lot of these people.
That's kind of what I think is the fact we have an election coming.
We had Alter, who had a close runoff. And
Alter's cool though. Alter never voted for B to get replaced.
Camping ban,
yeah, she never voted to rescind it. She said there needs to be a plan in place.
How did Kelly win at all in this city? It kind of tells you.
How did Mackenzie win?
Yeah,
lockdowns, I think helped. Yeah. I think that the civil unrest. I think that the rampant amount of homelessness that was predating that.
Yeah, that's my point. Is voters will get tired of things, and you think that it can't happen here. The liberals will always win every seat.
Well, Don Zimmerman almost got reelected. He lost by like 100 votes anyway, like to Flanagan 4 years ago. So in 2016. So I mean,
it can happen. Voters can decide.
I don't want to.
No.
You didn't find it fun?
But also, like you said to me, you shift the conversation. You know what I mean? You're able, if you're in a debate or
you get to talk about certain. I mean,
you bring topics that wouldn't be discussed before.
I really hope I don't. I really hope I don't, because it was cool. Mayor stuff was funny. Mm-hmm. City council stuff, things were a lot more different, and you had to try to do something.
Right.
Right. But I really hope that they get this shit together. And I hope that I'm in a good spot in life where I feel like I'm not as threatened by some of the actions of the city.
Right.
I really hope it doesn't come down to me having to do that.
And I think
that's what I'm saying. I really don't want to.
That's the same for me. Is that now my life is being threatened, or I was just a mom that was concerned for other children who were not safe. And now, because of it's such an emotional thing in every part of this, when I have the mayor's press secretary liking a comment where they're disparaging comments about me, a mom, it's like, wow, it's getting real. Like it's just going to get worse. And
it's not exactly very unifying. No. It doesn't show that you really want to listen to the community, because you got to listen to the people that disagree with you too to A, come up with the middle ground, and B, get these people to be quiet.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not willing to do that, then you're just going to make this backlash even worse.
I think with Save Austin now, I can't talk about it now, but we have big plans coming up, and I think it's not over, and I wish I could talk about it. I think in a couple of weeks, you will see what we're thinking in the enforcement, and also what we plan for the city. So I hope that everyone will continue to be invested in going to the city council meetings. The loudest people that were at the city council meetings were pro-homeless, camp anywhere you want people. But I think that the people that are most impacted are moms, communities, have to show up at city council, have to have their voices heard. And because I think that's important, because that's where the conversation goes.
I fully agree. I fully agree. There's a lot that's being said. I was trying to go on Twitter, and I was trying to find
the Chris Harris thing.
Yeah, I was trying to find that.
I hope that he.
I invited. Okay, so I invited him on. I
good.
sent him a message, and I invited him on.
Do y'all follow each other?
I follow him.
Oh, okay.
What did I say to him? I said, you have an open invitation to come on whenever you would like / feel ready to. I do my best to give everyone who comes on the utmost amount of respect, and we're all seen in this extremely biased narrative. And so if there's any misinformation that you want to clarify, I really would love to listen to you. You have an open invitation to clarify. that information, So it was like an hour ago. It was right before I met you.
Oh.
Right, but I put that up there. And I'm just like,
I'm
yo,
good,
man, you can go
good,
talk to
good,
me if
good.
you want. Like, I want
I
to
would
listen.
love
I
to
got
hear
these
that.
concerns. Like, I want to ask you these questions, but I just want to listen to you talk, man.
Yeah.
Like, people think that, like, I had Allison.
Besides
Alder's
his talking points, you know what
yeah,
I mean?
I had Allison Alter's husband on, and I like that guy gets so much shit from the people that we follow
Oh, wow.
on Twitter, right? But he was like one of the coolest people I ever met. Like,
Right.
he was awesome. Like, he was great, and he was like really reasonable. And he may have disagreed with me on certain things,
Right.
But he engaged me in a discussion, was open to like middle grounds. He was open to like actually hearing what people have to say.
Right, and
we-
that's what was so disheartening to me is that one of the 2 a.m. council meetings that we had with the mayor, somebody was booing Matt, the Republican. In the audience, they were booing, and Mayor Adler was like, "Hey, we're not going to have that. There's decorum. We need to respect the person speaking." And to see that his press secretary is liking comments that are, derogatory, it's like what kind of presence or what kind of role do you want to have in restoring the faith and the trust that you should have with the people that we've been affected by this.
His press secretary is creating so much fodder to
Yeah.
just make fun of Adler. Like, his press secretary is not doing Adler any
Yeah.
services whatsoever. Like, that press secretary is really not doing Adler any services.
True.
What do you think of Adler?
What do you think, Shea? Because I think
You met him. Like, what do you think of him?
He seems like a reasonable person, actually. I mean, I don't think we have any.
he's a
I don't
politician.
personally
I see him
have
as
any. I mean, of course he is. He had to get elected, but I don't actually have any strong
angst.
angst about Steve Adler. I almost feel like I don't know what his position actually is. I almost feel like he sort of at some level got roped into something that was probably not a very good idea, and maybe he even had some reservations but went with it, and it's going to cost him potentially. But yeah, I don't think. I do not actually have any belief at all. I know there's people conspiracy theorists who think, oh yeah, it's all a big plot. I don't think that Steve Adler gets up in the morning and tries to figure out how he's going to stick it to people who don't agree with him.
I don't think
for
that.
citizens.
I
but
mean, maybe like the real estate, like his real estate interests could be
Yeah.
benefiting from it. Like there's that
That's
that
right,
people
right.
talk about.
But I don't. So I don't follow that stuff. I don't know much about it. I mean, he's
But
obviously a
lowering
wealthy
the
man, but
land-
I mean, does he? I
Yeah.
really have a hard time believing that a person who's into real estate thinks that what's going on in Austin right now is a great thing.
Well,
I
it's
really
great
don't.
for lowering the prices so you can buy up land.
by land.
But is he buying up land in
don't
these
know.
areas?
Well, there was something
That's a
about Stream
conspiracy.
Realty that I
This
heard
is
about,
sort
but
of-
I can't like verify if it's factually accurate. But I heard
Yeah.
from somebody that like a company called Stream Realty was buying up a ton of property downtown while things were being locked down,
Oh, wow.
and that's a company that he could be connected to. But like I said, this is not a statement of fact. It's just me.
Yeah.
It's just me going off of what I hear.
It becomes
Um,
really
I'm
hard
so
to
sorry.
prove any of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you need like real records and real auto locks and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And you got to be careful with like spreading conspiracy theories
Yeah.
without like being able to like document
Yeah.
why that they might be true. Do
I think
what
most
Like,
of the
think you gotta
time
be
in
careful.
life-
you got to be careful with that.
I think most of the time you don't need a conspiracy theory to explain what's going on. Most of the time, so I just don't. That's not how
Like
I look
spreading a
at it.
conspiracy theory about Mayor Adler is a lot different than spreading a conspiracy theory about Bill Gates. Like because
Yeah.
you could like Adler, you could speculate all you want, but there's no like hard data to conclude. There's not as much hard data, or not like I haven't seen any physical hard data to like conclusively prove anything about him, right? But with like Bill Gates, you've seen pictures of him with Jeffrey Epstein. You've seen flight logs. You've seen Melinda Gates talking about the fact that him and Epstein had a close relationship. There's a relationship that Epstein had with MIT and the science department and a whole bunch of scientists who were studying at MIT and who were connected to the NIH and
Right.
all that stuff. And so you can draw these
So-
allegations based on some of this information, but it's just that the information available to you at hand determines how you like view people, right?
Right, and I think when I talk to left-centered people is we started sounding like a cult. We're just going to follow what the council has done no matter what, and I have a problem with that because I think no one has been served by what the city council did June 2019. Not having a plan, not having a homeless strategy officer harmed everybody, homeless included. I would not trust any agency, homeless advocacy group that supports Camp Anywhere You Want, where they're living like they live in filth and squalor. I don't trust that judgment.
No, I think a lot of people are in the same boat as you. It's odd though, the whole Adler thing. Like for a while, I was super mad at him, man. Like, especially lockdowns, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you got to take a step back and say, okay, well, luckily I made it all right.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine. I'm okay. And I got this podcast, and I got something that I grew, that allowed me to like grow, or I have this new project that might not be where it's at if Adler was actually good at his job.
Well,
So it's like how mad can you really be? It's like you almost owe this guy a debt of gratitude because like the incompetence that this guy and then the city displayed this past couple years. That's a big reason why I still have relevancy, man. Like, so it's like, how mad can you really be?
yeah, I mean, maybe
like
that's
under
just
those circumstances, right? You're
Right.
just like, damn, dude, you like did a really bad job of leading us through a pandemic. In terms of like how people were mentally, like from a mental health standpoint, you did a horrible job. Maybe like people's lives were protected because you told people to not go out or do anything. But
But he went
the
to
mental,
travel.
like, yeah, and then you went to, but the in terms of like spreading like vitriol and the mental health component of how you did this,
Yeah.
and the economic impact that this had on like small business owners and stuff like that, or people who are involved with small businesses, and the lack of regard for that, that's really bad, man. Like that's really bad. And like I honestly felt like, and I still feel that I could have done a better job of leading us through a pandemic, being somebody who drives this pedicab, just based on the fact that I'm so much better at communicating with people
yeah.
and understanding regular people than he is.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a big Adler blind spot is he does not seem like he's well connected to ordinary people, and so
And the people who have
You-
his ear, like Chris Harris, like
It's-
are not representative of Austin.
yeah,
They're not
it's-
ordinary
it's-
people. It's like, how
no.
often are you going to like the barbecue spots? How often do you like go to Sam's Barbecue or go to like any like local fixtures where people have been around forever? Like, how often are you doing that? Like,
Well, not just
how
go
often do you
there.
even walk?
Do
How
you
often
have
do you even walk around
friends
and go to
that-
your local bar? Like,
Yeah,
go to the
right.
bar that's not Trace.
And-
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you're not doing that. So how do you even get? You
No.
have a social responsibility as a public official
Yeah.
to go to places in your neighborhood to actually interact with these people. Like and I
Right.
felt
Yeah.
like you not doing that is
and listen to what they say.
really bad. Like Mackenzie.
Yeah,
She goes out.
Yeah.
She'll talk to people.
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean, you can only do so much as a politician, and you might get too involved with some of this bureaucratic stuff. But you're at least talking to people. They see your face. They're interacting with you.
yeah. I think that's a problem, and the whole pandemic thing. Look, I think some of these guys are probably damned if they do, damned if they don't. If you miscall it and a bunch of people die, you're in trouble. If you miscall it and you think a bunch of people wouldn't have died, you're in trouble.
Listen,
and I
a
think
lot
the
of- a lot of
leftists landed on the side of wanting hard lockdowns, and then if you look at those on the right,
Like in Florida.
it's okay,
But
it's going to be
It's funny though, because during South by, pre-South by, there was a lot of people on that Recall Adler Facebook group that were mad that Adler wasn't canceling South by. And then those same people are mad about lockdown. So it was like, yeah, it is damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think that after like a month
Yeah.
or so, you could have been like not fighting the governor on some of this reopening stuff. And
No,
figuring
that-
out a way to-
clearly-
you could have, if you really cared about public health, you could have been giving that money to small businesses and
Yeah.
incentivizing these companies to stay closed and making sure people got paid correctly. And you could have, these doctors and have relationships with these doctors more so than anybody else, any other common person. You could have figured out a way to meet with the council in a way that was safe, that was in person. You could have done that. You could have been like, yeah, we're meeting outside. We're going to put our masks on, but we're going to meet outside.
Right.
yeah. There's clearly
They didn't do it.
there's clearly there was a kind of almost a stickiness to some of the lockdown measures that people didn't want to turn loose of, and the further people were on the left or they felt their constituency was almost like a badge of honor. It's a little bit of virtue.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you what, though, it made me like change the way I voted, change everything about me, man. Because I used to listen to I voted for Sanders in the primary, right? Like I would have probably voted for him if he had gotten the nomination,
Right.
and we didn't have all this COVID stuff. I probably would have voted for him in November, right? Like without any doubts, I probably would have voted for him. But after seeing what I saw now from like a bunch of these people, like members of the Democratic Party that didn't seem to care at all about like any kind helping these small businesses while they were being closed, because I could be a small business owner one
Right.
day, right? You know, and like the fact that you were just insensitive to people who worked for these small companies, but Walmart, Amazon, Facebook, all these big
essential
mega
companies.
companies just balloon their profit margin. All of a sudden, the people on the left who are supposed to hate this stuff, they're the ones telling us all to stay home, not realizing, or maybe doing it intentionally, making this inequality and this gap even worse. And so it just made me like really turned off to it, you know?
Yeah, I think it's what turned a lot of people off is the picking the winners and the losers. You can understand the justification people use to do it, but it doesn't mean it set well with people when they feel like a official is deciding that one 100-person gathering is somehow essential and the other 100-person gathering is non-essential. It just rubs people the wrong way. And
especially when you're not affected by this at all.
Yeah.
You know, if Adler said, I mean, he already doesn't take a salary, but if Adler said, hey, man, while this is happening, not only will I not take a salary, but the entire city council is going to forfeit their salary until we get this thing situated, and also the people that I've hired on my staff also have to abandon their salary, then I guarantee you they would have done a lot more to get us to reopen safely quicker.
Yeah, I'm curious about the American Rescue Plan and how much money will be derived towards businesses compared to the homeless, because I know that's what they're talking about right now as
exactly.
we speak.
So when you're not giving it to the spots that couldn't operate
Shut
for like
down.
a year or whatever the time frame was, you're creating more anti-homelessness. Like it just seems it doesn't make sense
At
the way
all.
in which this is happening at all. It just makes no sense to me. And that's why I want to talk to these other people and
Yes.
ask their perspective, because
Right.
it's just creating more vitriol, more anti-homelessness. It's making me less likely to want to
Right.
help a homeless person in need. I had these two homeless guys. They I have this 86 El Camino, and they always talk about how much they like my car. And stuff,
Right.
right. And these two guys were talking about my car for a minute, and they were cool. They were nice, and after a while, I was like, I wasn't really gonna give them any money, but I had $2. And I'm just like, yeah, man, you guys each want $1. I gave it to them, right? And I'm just like, it's got to be, it's presentation. Just the fact that they were talking about my car and complimenting my car, and they didn't ask me for anything. I just gave them $1, right? But then when you have swords of people from all over the country or all over the state coming here, or all over the Southwest, which is really what it is, because we're the only city in the Southwest that allows this stuff.
Right.
You got a lot of you got people that are a lot more aggressive and just be like, give me money, you know
right.
what I mean?
And the
it's
city council will dispute the numbers and say they didn't all they came from the woods, but you're defying logic if you think all of these people came from the woods. Number one. Number two, San Antonio was able to do their point in time count with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, they did not want to do a point in time count, I believe, because it would have shown how much it ballooned since in just 2 years. The numbers it started.
Yeah, so what's up with the count? That's the thing too, right? They didn't release the count yet, or when are they going to release it, or what's the deal with all that?
They didn't have a point in time count because of the pandemic. So they're going to do some other type of study that will reflect how many numbers they estimate are here. But the actual where they have volunteers and they go all over Austin at the exact same
You're not going to
time.
get an accurate count because of the virus, though.
Yeah, but San Antonio did it. San Antonio did it during the pandemic,
But
they didn't have a proper election.
Do you think the numbers would be accurate though? Because you'll see a lot of people that are not going to show up and go out, and you're going to see a lot less volunteers.
Yeah, they have.
I don't think you're going to get an accurate count anyway.
No, I think these are people that are
Just-
statisticians, that they have a science to this, and they're able to estimate, right? I mean, I'm not going to dispute the numbers, but the fact that they didn't do it because of the pandemic, I do not believe that. I believe they did it because they didn't want to show how much increase it happened in just 2 years.
Well, the numbers I've heard that say it's not just people moving in. These are not numbers from right-wing groups. These are just numbers that are from Echo or from people who basically were opposed to Prop B. Is that 80% of the people are, quote, from Texas. My view is when you have to use a qualifier like from Texas, that kind of tells me what I need to know. If you wanted to tell me that 90% were from Austin, you'd say Austin, but they can't.
They don't say that.
They say 80% from Texas.
Meaning that they're traveling from other parts of the state.
Well, I mean, this is a big state, right?
Or other cities are busing them,
You got so you just start asking yourself, okay, you can't get anywhere, folks, if you can't understand where people are coming from, why they're coming here. So there's a narrative that people want to avoid, which is if you provide a situation that's attractive, they're going to come to it. So somehow we're supposed to believe that homeless people are all very nice, rational people who just need a little help in life. But they're too stupid. Yeah, but they're apparently too stupid to know a good deal when they see one. That's ridiculous. They do know a good deal when they see one. And citizens is another area where you can continue to skirt the issue, but citizens are going to eventually get tired of it, and they're going to force you to tell them the truth.
Yeah, do you think that a reason why things are so divided or the reason why the council does what they're doing is because they're just talking into an echo chamber? And do you also think that maybe a reason for that is because people like you or us don't really, we'll say what we want to say and we'll show that we're angry on like social media, but when it comes time to like coming up with solutions, the only people that show up to come up with the solutions are people that are like the pro-homeless crowd or the advocacy groups. Like,
Well,
so then doesn't that facilitate more of an echo chamber? That's my question, right?
Yeah, I know it's a question, but I don't think they didn't have a solution either. No one can say that when they lifted the ban, that was a solution. It made everything worse for everyone. I think it's anti-homeless to allow them to be the way that they are.
I agree.
So I do believe that people would say Prop B is not a solution, but in the ordinance it states, the city will find camp locations. Like, it can't be any clearer, and that's exactly what's happening now.
No, well, I know that. I'm saying like
This was a catalyst.
Going forward, though, I think that it would be a really good thing for a lot more of a diverse group of people to actually be directly
Right.
involved in what happens with the homeless when it comes to dealing with solutions, so that the
I agree.
solutions at play don't just come from advocacy groups. They come
Right.
from everybody, and we all agree on something that could work. That's
Right.
my take.
And what I find interesting is that Community First, it's nationally recognized as an excellent place that has supported homeless and helping homeless, and they chose not to have an opinion about Prop B, and other places like that. However, in Haven for Hope or in Houston, they have camping bans. You have to have a way to compel people to seek services. You cannot have, with reckless abandon, everywhere you can do whatever you want, whenever. That can't happen.
My friend has a charity called Serve Inspire where they give toiletries and job training to homeless people.
Oh,
And they like do they give food every Thanksgiving. It's called like Blake's Plate.
Aw.
So the thing is called like Serve Inspire. It's on Instagram and Twitter. I think it's on Instagram. And the guy's name's like Blake Anthony Carter, but you should connect with him and talk to him, because he was telling me about how frustrated he is in terms of the fact that the city doesn't respond to him in any capacity when he tries to
Wow.
talk to them. So
about the need or
yeah,
how to
or
help.
about what he's doing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what he tells me. Maybe I'm not.
No,
100%
no.
like, you
There
should
was
go hit this guy up and
the
see
chamber.
see
I think
what's
it was
up,
the
you know?
chamber, the Austin Chamber of Commerce. They came up with this big solution, and also this women's Christian group where they want to buy land and put tiny homes. The city council will not return calls. And
Tiny homes are great. That's what we should. That sounds awesome.
I
Or
don't
there's-
understand that.
I think that hey, look, you'll have to figure out why they don't respond to yourself, but I'll give you my nickel on it. I think that if you look at what Housing First is, it not only is it the, kind of the standard policy for the city. There's good reason to learn about Housing First. Actually, if you don't know about Housing First, you should actually educate yourself on Housing First. But what I believe happens is, because it is basically a national policy, and because it is at some level backed by, I say at some level backed by data. I'm not being facetious, but as a person who has a science, career, that you have to be careful when people say, "Oh, it's backed by the data." The data is there is no
And
the
this
data.
is the reality.
So there is no the data, but Housing First, there is a coherent strategy that it represents, and that's what the city is interested in. And there's an article on Vox that basically says, why is Housing First failing? And you can read the article, but the boil down of it is Housing First. It's a very simple proposition. It says that if you offer a person a house with absolutely no strings attached, with no expectation of performance, not now, not ever, they'll take it, and you'll end homelessness. That's really shocking, right? Wow.
Yeah,
So, that's what Housing First fundamentally is. And so the reason it's, quote, failing in all these cities who've adopted it, because that is the stated policy of almost every major city that's having problems, is because they're putting restrictions. They actually expect people to follow some rules. And once you do that, you don't house. So when you look at places like Community First and other places where they're proposing to do the tiny homes, everybody can get behind that, because in their head they think, okay, that's great, because they're going to help these people get on their feet. And you can help some people like that. And I'm 100% for supporting that. Absolutely. But it won't pass muster with the city or the activist crowd, because it doesn't deal with the non-compliant very well. Those places have rules. And you have to believe one of two things. Either you believe that there's just not very many non-compliant people out there, and hence the problem is tiny. If you don't deal with them, the city can
Or
take
they
care of
think
them.
it's just like a right-wing talking point or something. A lot of these guys are
I think it's.
I don't agree. I don't think that that's the case, but I think that might be the
I think
response, right?
I kind of think I think that there's probably a complex set of reasons. One of which is I think some of the people do actually know that there's a much larger percentage of the population in the homeless community that tend towards non-compliance when you say you have to follow rules, then they want to have a discussion with the public about. And those people are very difficult to house because the minute you say, I'm going to put my foot on you and you're going to have to follow a rule, it's like, well, you can keep your house. I'm hitting the streets. And so I can understand why the city doesn't want to get involved with any of these other efforts because it doesn't fit the pedagogy of Housing First, which is the stated policy, and they're not going to want to be distracted from that policy.
Yeah, you also got people that get housing and still go beg and panhandle and hang out in the camps afterwards.
Well, that's true. Although, Community First is kind of interesting. Last time we were there, it's been a while. They didn't really make any. They acknowledged that the people who live there can panhandle. I mean, I think they even have a transportation to get them to town. But, this is where I'm a centrist. I'm actually not. It doesn't totally, make me worried that people are going to panhandle. I mean, you got to find realistic, avenues to solutions. And so, if a person comes and panhandles and doesn't cause problems, it's not aggressive, it's not threatening, and they go pay some money to Community First as part of their rent, and that's the life they can sustain, I'm kind of like, yeah, all right, I'm fine with it.
Hey, there's plenty of people
that's
that
a hell of a lot better than what we got.
Yeah, I'm not
way better than
complaining
what we got.
about that. Anyway, I think
Yeah.
we've probably gone for about an hour. So,
Thank you.
yeah, no. Before we wrap up, how do we get a hold of you? And just briefly, what's the plan for the future in terms of like Save Austin Now, and how are you going to continue getting involved to like push the city in terms of adopting like realistic and compassionate solutions to help these people?
Well, yes. Please go to our website, Save Austin Now. We're also Save Austin Now PAC, but we're back to being Save Austin Now, which is an education website to inform you of our whatever we're doing next. And also, I'm at Dallas Latina, and then
I'm not involved. I'm just the third wheel.
You're just the brains behind the operation.
Unattractive
like
third wheel.
You're doing great.
thank you
man.
thank you for what you do. I think it's very valuable.
Of course.
And I know that you want to hear from every side of it, and you are very respectful with everybody. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do my best, right? I do my best to do that. Anyway, how do we get a hold of you? What's your Twitter handle? Because I know you got a
At Dallas
Dallas
Latina. Yes.
All right. Anyway, Cleo, Patricek, and
Shea Patricek.
Shea Patricek.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for coming on.
Later.